Well, we'll be quick. I know you're a busy guy, but
yeah, no worries.
Want to talk about immigration a little bit, and you've been in Congress now a couple of years, but I know before you, this issue's kind of perpetually been unaddressed, unfixed. Do you feel like there is an opportunity to fix it?
This issue's been perpetually unfixed for not just my 4 years in Congress, but for decades, and it's going to take real leadership and a willingness to see the big picture to eventually get it fixed. And so I am hopeful. I'm hopeful because I believe in the steps that we're taking right now to make sure we're getting the border under control. It has been a really big, gaping issue for our country the last few years, and we're taking corrective steps right now to shore up the border security, enforce the law enforcement, put the cartels, on notice, and hopefully, after we do this aspect of it, we can look at a more comprehensive immigration reform, because that's the other key part that needs to take place.
Are you pleased with what's happening now at the border compared to, a couple months ago?
Right, so the most important thing, and this is something that President Trump obviously ran on, I think this was a big reason he won with a significant margin, was because this was so poorly handled by the Biden administration. And I'm pleased to see us take, like I said, those necessary steps to enforce, border security. We had policies that didn't make any sense. The catch and release policy, an unwillingness to remain in Mexico. I mean, those are common sense policies that deal with the vast majority of the border crossings. And when you deal with that aspect of it, and you see the numbers and the statistics now of how many fewer border crossings we have, illegal border crossings, you have to feel good about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Now that maybe there's this opportunity to address immigration, I mean, do you feel like Utah can play a role in this? Because we've passed the Utah Compact in 2010 and then reaffirmed it in 2019 that kind of lays out principles for what immigration policy should look like. Can that play a role in a federal solution, do you think?
No, it absolutely can. And, the first part of it is making sure that we communicate, that type of positive communication on what, a good long-term comprehensive immigration plan looks like. I love the Utah Compact because it hits all the key points with regards to border security, but also talks about the importance of good immigration and how it's good for the economy, how you support families, a welcoming culture. But we have to be able to get the dangerous part of it under control first, and that's where the big rub is. That's why for 30 plus years this has been such a tough issue. Is because you have two parties, and the Republicans want to prioritize making sure that we have strong border security, and Democrats want to prioritize making sure we figure out what the immigration reform looks like for folks that are already here illegally and dealing with that side of it. There is good ideas that are cemented that we know we have to do, but we can't do any of that until we shore up the border security side. And we're only a couple months into this, and so once we get that aspect done, it's can we look at that broader piece? Democrats won't necessarily, they don't often sign on to the border security matters until they know that they're going to have DACA and other things like that fixed. Where Republicans want to make sure we do that part first, and then we can go and approach it. Because if you just sign on to, the immigration reform type of stuff right away, that actually, without shoring up the border, that actually causes more problems at the border, because there's a mass incentive to have the cartels, sneak more people into the country. So do that first security piece, sustain it, make sure that it's working well, and you can look to those bigger items that have to be dealt with at some point.
Yeah, you've built yourself up into a leader now in the House in the couple of years you've been in Congress. Can you use your leadership influence to try to push this issue forward finally?
Yeah, my colleagues oftentimes get sick of me talking about the good that Utah does and the sensible ideas that we have, but we'll keep pushing that, and I'm hopeful that we can address this. Right now, there'll be the Trump administration's going through a unique moment that they didn't have to deal with. He didn't have to deal with his first term. Because over the last 4 years of President Biden's time here, I mean, we had record numbers that are just blew the record books off. How many crossings, how many legal immigrants have entered the country, and now the administration's trying to deal with this major influx. So that's going to be another element that they're going to have to deal with, and that's going to play out as you see, and it's going to be a topic that will be over the next, I don't know how long of a time period, but figuring out how we stop major activity at the border, that's been a success over the last few months. But there are so many people here that are here illegally, and we need to figure out how to deal with that number of folks. That's going to be a part of their administration's next few months and maybe years. But I'll keep using my voice to make sure that we're talking about broad immigration reform now that we've been able to show that we're doing really good on the enforcement side. And there's a lot of Democrats that came on and voted for the Lincoln Riley bill. I think that was a good sign and a show of, hey, we're willing to work on this. This was good, sensible policy that the Republicans have put forward. I don't understand why Chuck Schumer wouldn't have addressed this 2 years ago when we first introduced this bill. That was clearly a sign that he doesn't have a good sense for where his caucus of Democrat senators are. Many of them wanted to sign on to this bill, but he never let them. And as soon as he got removed from his majority leader position, they got a chance to vote on it, and numerous Democrat senators came on board and voted for the Lincoln Riley bill. I think that's probably the thing we should look at, that there is bipartisan support for border security. We're doing that part now, and let's build towards the broader implications of this major problem, because otherwise, the next time a Democrat gets into the White House, I fear that they're just going to take a page out of Biden's book and let there be lawlessness down there.
Yeah. I don't think anyone would dispute the border crossings have improved. The Trump administration did also rescind a rule that forbid going into places like hospitals, churches, and schools to make arrests. Do you feel like that was the right move? So
I think the Trump administration is heavily focused right now on identifying folks that are here illegally but have committed crimes, and trying to deal with it. I mean, we even see that play out. That's tough enough, but that's where their focus is right now. So these individuals probably are not at hospitals and at churches and things like that. So I support the concept of the first wave of having any type of deportation or repatriating that goes on. Let's focus on those that have committed crimes. That's an area that is in strong agreement across the aisle as well, and I appreciate that we're trying to focus on that and see that through. I think this is part of the step. Shore up the border, remove individuals that are truly dangerous or have shown that they have, committed crimes, and then take this to the next step on figuring out how to deal with the broader implication.
Because I wonder too, we have seen reports about some who are trying to go through the legal process that are getting detained at airports and other places. Do you worry about some getting kind of swept up in this fever of let's go enforce the law? Right.
So I absolutely worry about how this has been such a tough issue over the last few years, and we just, the administration refused to do anything about it, and now we're left with a lot of problems that are going to be, like you mentioned. So it's important to follow the law and make your asylum claim the best that you can. Go through the legal process, and I'm confident that we'll be able to, adhere to that as best as possible. But it's tough with the sheer numbers that have we've seen over the last few years. I think this will settle in, and we'll be able to have a better chance for success now that we've done the first few things that I mentioned: shoring up the border, removing criminals from our country, and then we'll have a chance to look at the broader implication. Yeah, there was that deal last year that kind of died in the 11th hour to reform immigration. Were you disappointed to see that fall through? And do you feel like the president would support immigration reform now? So I was disappointed not to see things like Remain in Mexico, dealing with the parole authority, ending catch and release. like, we know that those are the three major things that would have actually squashed a lot of the border activity, illegal border activity that was pretty much, the cartels were owning that zone. I was disappointed that that deal didn't include any of that. That showed me that President Biden and congressional Democrats weren't serious about border security. Would it have reduced the numbers? It possibly could have, but it wasn't nearly a good enough bill. And I know that a lot of congressional Republicans took a lot of criticism for not being willing to sign on to this compromise deal. It in our opinion, wouldn't have done anything to do what we've seen over the last two months. So I like the concept that we were working towards something. I absolutely think there's bipartisan solutions to play out here, but we have to do it in the way that actually addresses what was the main problem at the border, and none of that compromise bill last year really addressed that. Some of it can be good if you've already done things like remain in Mexico and ending catch and release. Now that we've done that, of course, only by executive order, let's put that into law. And let's use some of those other aspects that were in that bill to then strengthen it. So I think there's real possibility, and I'm hopeful that we can see some of that play out. But the real immediate issues have been dealt with. Now we have to deal with the longer term effects of the bad policy over the last 4 years, and figuring out what to do so this isn't a future problem. Because if all we do is just Trump's executive orders, then I don't have a lot of faith that the next Democrat Democrat president will just repeal it all, and we'll be through the same process and the same bad outcomes that we saw over the last few years. So let's get it into law somehow. And if we have to, work on things like DACA together, we should absolutely be willing to do that. And if you could get remain in Mexico and ending catch and release and DACA and finding options for folks that are here, it puts them in the back of the line. A lot of the things that you would see laid out in the dignity proposal from Representative Maria Salazar from Florida, those are all really good concepts and principles to be able to see play out in a longer term approach.
Last question for you. Utah's known as a compassionate state. We've got immigrants integrated throughout our state, and from Logan to St. George. Do you feel like any federal solution can maybe look to Utah's example of being compassionate while also trying to enforce, and the kind of the principles outlined in the compact that are maybe different than what we see in other red states?
With how difficult of an issue this is, I think that the Utah approach with compassion, sensibility is the only way to make this a long-term, lasting, positive solution for our country. And I think that you have really good, strong support from your federal delegation to try to keep encouraging that. And use it we got to turn a negative into a positive, and Utah has such a great way of doing that. And not only just with, like across our state, with finding work, finding community, finding faith. I mean, look what we've done with the refugee programs. I mean, this is something that we've all galvanized around and doing as best as we can. And look in parts of my district up in Logan, I mean, they have like a 100% success rate of making sure folks have a job, someplace to live, their ability to have their kids in schools. And when we do things legally and we go through a process, the community rallies around it. And so that welcoming embrace and approach is alive and well in Utah. And I want to be a voice, and I continue to be a voice on how to make that our national approach.
Okay, thank you very much.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Daniel.